You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing with your host, Connor Byrne.
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Don't forget to rate, review, or subscribe to the show wherever you're listening or watching. Honestly, out of anything you do, this really helps us reach and build on this amazing community of engaged marketers just like you. So give us a rating or review, and it really does help us. And of course, if you are interested in getting involved with That's What I Call Marketing, our sponsorship kit is available. Just go to our website, that'swhatIcallmarketing.com/sponsor, and then let's have a conversation about how best we can partner with you, your agency, or brand. Well, on to today's show. And today I get to meet Ellie Norman. And my background, if you're watching, is a dead giveaway. But for those who are listening and can't see, well, I am surrounded by the amazing, the magical Old Trafford. And yes, Ellie is Chief Communications Officer of Man United. And as I explained to Ellie in the episode, this is the first time my kids have showed any interest in this podcast, and it's been going for 2 years. Ellie has such an inspiring journey, growing up on a farm to becoming a global marketing superstar. Now, I know this is actually something that Ellie would be far too humble to admit, but her story is a testament to the unexpected paths life can take us on and the power of embracing every turn. As we unravel her story today, you'll discover the pivotal moments that shaped her career, a sort of accidental fall into marketing and how that led to a love affair with the profession, how passion for motorised vehicles and a stint in toothpaste brand laid the groundwork for marketing success. And there's so much more. Ellie shares insights into the role relationships and human connections play in crafting winning strategies, the transition from agency life to iconic brands like Honda, Virgin Media, and of course Formula One. And yes, she was there with Drive to Survive. The impact of authenticity and storytelling in elevating marketing into an art form is something Ellie is passionate about. And as this title attests to, we connect on one of my passion topics, curiosity. This is an episode that is enlightening, it's inspiring, full of wisdom, laughter, candid revelations, and there are definitely a few surprises along the way that just might change the way you think about your marketing and your marketing career. Today's show starts after a quick word from our show sponsors.
Today's show is supported by the Indie List, the leader in providing you with easy access to hundreds of highly experienced marketers quickly and cost effectively. Visit theindielist.ie to speak to the Indie List team today.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Ellie, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing.
It's a real pleasure to join you, Connor. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, listen, I have to say to you, I debated how much, Man United stuff I needed to have around today, but it's roasting here. So even the jumper might have to come up at some stage. And listen, it's funny, I've done a good few episodes of this podcast, and this is the first time that my kids have cared even the slightest bit about it. So much so my 11-year-old has actually taken to calling you by your first name. So when are you meeting Ellie?
I love that. And for me, that is the perfect summation of the power of sport, and just how emotionally connected people are to sport and teams, players they love.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And he's not the Man United fan, so we'll get to that later. I keep telling him he's a disappointment, but there. There's so much to talk to you about today, and we could spend the full amount of time we have on even just one part of your career, but I definitely want to try get through some of it for people who may not know. But one of the things as I was kind of listening and researching and looking into it, I discovered that you grew up on a farm, and that's where your obsession with kind of motorized vehicles came about.
That is 100% true. The older you get, the more you kind of reflect, and perhaps there's a little bit of rose tinted sort of lenses, but I now reflect and look back, and it was such a privilege to grow up in the sort of countryside on a farm. I mean, at the time, it's hugely frustrating because you can't get anywhere. But now I am so grateful for that sort of upbringing and the sense of freedom of just a lot of space around you, plenty of opportunity to get into mischief. But that is absolutely where I just wanted to tinker with anything with an engine and see if I could drive it.
Amazing, because obviously then you had the space probably to drive it and not be on the main roads. That was
Exactly.
probably helpful as well. But it's kind of interesting because it wasn't marketing. Like, you weren't, like, I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who were like, oh, I remember seeing, the Levi's ad when I was 10, and that was, that got me into marketing. But you were very much passionate about kind of motorized vehicles and that kind of world. How did you end up in marketing?
Yeah, it's I think it's a lucky accident. I left school at 18 after doing A-levels. Was living with my mum and my stepdad, and there was absolutely no way that I was going to be allowed to leave school and not do anything. So I did have to sort of clearly get a job. And that was my sort of lucky accident of honestly falling into a job where I think, it was like marketing assistant, but in truth, it was just do anything and everything that you are asked. And actually from there, it was a real sort of journey actually of understanding the power of marketing, starting to better understand myself and where my strengths were, relationships with people, a real curiosity as to what makes people tick. Why do people do things? Why do they not do things? And actually from there, learning on the job and then sort of doing online courses and qualifications, I was like, I love marketing.
And isn't it funny because that, like, as you say, happy accident kind of put you in a position. Am I right that the first client you worked on was it a toothpaste brand?
It was, yes. It was called Yanina International, and that was my first job from leaving school. And again, it's so sort of far removed from the sort of FMCG or sort of the CPG sort of marketing, classical marketing training. There wasn't any of that. This was literally a sort of startup. But I am so grateful and learned so much from going to school into a place of work.
What were the things you kind of, you look back on that now and kind of feel like they were almost foundational for you at that time in terms of the learnings?
I mean, this may sound silly, but honestly, service. And what I mean by that is when you go into sort of work, it's so different from having been in sort of education, and just the real understanding of commercially what makes companies tick, the importance of having a great product, but equally actually the importance of service. So whether that is your clients, whether it is your customers, or now for me, sort of fan, is really thinking from that outside in point of view of how can I help solve their problem? And it could be, making something easier, saving time, but always putting yourself into the shoes that they're walking in. And then actually, what can we do in whatever organization you're in to solve that, but equally solve it in a way which is beneficial to your business?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective you have from kind of the outside in, because, even today I was having a conversation with somebody about the inside out. Often, like, we're so obsessed with particularly on maybe the brand side more so, probably agency, because you have a diversity, you may be less so, but I think it happens the longer you work on something. You just become obsessed with, but this is what we are, and this is what we have to say, and you need to say it louder. And it's like, well, does that connect? Where's that connection?
Yeah. And also, Connor, I always think, in real life, of which we all kind of live it each day as individuals, we're not in our bubbles, in our work bubbles. And actually, the realities of life are we're making however many thousands of decisions a day, being pulled from pillar to post, friends, family, relationships, paying bills. Like, people aren't thinking about all of the things that we think about inside our organizations from a marketing point of view. And even down to the simplest of things of, like, what's the one thing that you would actually like someone to remember? Or we might be structured in a way internally where we understand our sort of acronyms. And, within any organization, we all have that. But for a real person, a customer, a fan, it is just Manchester United. They're not distinguishing between whether it's Manchester United Foundation or, Manchester United, it's match day. It is just Manchester United or whatever other company. And often we're structured in the way that you can often be inside to out is in amongst all this kind of nuance that honestly no one cares about.
So true, isn't it? Like no one cares. They care about something like, Manchester United. They care about Manchester United, but they don't necessarily care about, like, they certainly don't care about like a brand pyramid or all those things we create.
No,
they're certainly not at home going, that's not aligned to the core of the brand.
Yeah, and it's it's inevitably about how we leaving people thinking, feeling, and doing.
Yeah,
and to be impactful, memorable, but honestly solve a problem.
Yeah, those connections with people. Can I ask you just about that time kind of in the agency? And I know it led you to work on Honda and then being seconded into Honda. But when you look back to that, was there, because you'd gone from, as you say, from school into agency, and were there people there or somebody there that you can remember that was like helping you learn? Because it's a big jump.
It's a huge jump. And after I did the sort of short time at Yanina, which was obviously the toothpaste, I then did go to agency, and it was 5 years. And that was, I would say, the most foundational time. A great guy, despite sharing the same surname, we're actually not related, but a great guy, Ellie Norman, ran the sort of agency. And it was for me, that agency environment was phenomenal kind of grounding, because I was exposed to lots of experts, started to really understand the processes and the steps to great work, but equally was given the opportunity to then sort of start the theory and the qualification learning sort of with IPA courses.
Right.
But having that sort of guidance and going in, in a really sort of junior sort of account exec position, again, was able to work on something I was hugely passionate about, automotive, with Honda. But equally, actually, the importance of rapport and relationships, because, as that account person, you're serving your client and needing to sort of understand their perspectives. How whatever we're doing, how does it impact the business? Yeah. But inside an agency, again, you've got so many different skill sets. So actually, how do I need to show up to get the best out of the creative team?
Yeah.
And taking some client feedback, but actually, how will that land? And how do we land that feedback, but in a way which is empowering and motivating?
Yeah.
And that for me, those sort of 5 years, I took so much from, and still for me today, sort of kind of, and particularly now with sort of technology and the internet, knowledge is easy to come by if we choose to seek it out. But the fundamentals of good relationships, good communication between human beings, for me is the real distinctive differentiator as to what makes someone great versus could be better.
That is really, really interesting. And I think, and I don't know if you'd agree, but I do think agencies are a great place for that grounding. And like my background, I was actually in hospitality, and that's a huge part of it, because relationships. And I think when you enjoy and love that, it's agencies, first of all, are a great place for that, but then being able to bring that client side, because the relationships are then, it's totally different. And I'd love to talk to you about that when you went client side. Like, that difference is massive, because you're like, oh, now I understand all the things that I didn't understand that were going on. But the relationships are even more powerful because you have to have the relationship with the agency. And like, how did you make that shift?
Yeah. I mean, again, let's say a lucky accident. My day-to-day client at Honda was leaving the organization, and the chief marketing officer at the time spoke to the agency and asked whether I would be able to second for sort of 6 months. And I suspect partly because I was obviously familiar with the projects, number one, but also number two, really valued and loved the time with the Japanese R&D team because of this curiosity as to how does the engineering work. And so actually I was able to sort of go across on secondment, which extended from 6 months into my sort of almost 7-8 years at sort of Honda. But the shift was massive. So when you're agency side, certainly my sort of experience, everything that we did felt massive.
Right.
But then, but when you then go into client side, you realize that the bit of the agency is such a small, like, wedge of the pie.
Yeah.
Like right at the very end of how is something going to be brought to life. And really, really important, and clearly plays its kind of role in sustainable growth. But moving into kind of client, and then you're like, oh, okay. So we got factories, we got supply chain.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. And then you really understand all of those kind of commercial levers. And it gave me an entirely different perspective in terms of everything that you're then doing with your agency partners. I always saw it as, again, a sense of responsibility to really help our agency partners understand the complexity of this business, and equally some of the sort of challenges. So it can often be, when you're just looking at like one wedge of the pie, you can hold some very strong convictions about size of a logo, or I don't know what a call to action is. But when you're able to bring in the other perspective of like, no, like this pressure for driving how many test drives are going to get booked, this is like real pressure. This is what dealers care about. This is what dealers need. Then you start to have a really different, but actually fulfilling conversation, because it's always coming to that point of what is the win-win and how can we better understand each other's starting points, but how do we finish together?
Yeah. Do you think people who, and I don't mean to be unfair, but people who haven't worked in agencies struggle a bit with that? Like, have you seen that through your career where there's a gap or no?
I mean, I obviously carried the bias of having worked in agencies.
Me too.
And whenever I speak with like younger people who are at the start of their careers, I am one of the first people to recommend working in an agency, because it gave me such an appreciation for the level of care and detail and thoughtfulness and real kind of critical thinking that goes into something that is arguably subjective to many, but is a undervalued skill and craft. And I am an advocate of recommending people spend some time in agency at the start of their sort of careers. I would never change having done my time, but equally going client side for me has been the most fulfilling time. But I think having a little bit of experience of both is something that I'm certainly grateful of, but I do recommend to others.
Yeah, look, I would completely agree with you. I just find it's a fascinating place to learn and understand. And also, like you've talked about curiosity, and I talk about curiosity a lot. Like, if you're curious, like, it's a wonderful place to be curious, because you'll also get to work on different things, and no day is the same, and so I completely agree with you. And look, I think,
and equally, sorry, I was going to say, and equally, what I think is amazing is, again, now where we're sort of getting to maybe sort of more blended between in-house capabilities and sort of external, is actually the relationship. Because I think for me, one of the fantastic things about agencies is, again, that outside in, because you've got a variety of clients. And actually, just again, if I think about creatives, planners, strategists, you're always outside looking at what those kind of cultural trends are. What is happening from a macro perspective, what's happening within the kind of sector, seeing what else is happening, and actually where are you going to get your cut through, your impact. And that, I think, is so important. And now with an internal team, it's almost trying to bring some of that in and just actually ask people, like, where are you getting your inspiration from? And it could be, going for a walk, Connor, or, you see a piece of art, or I love just watching people, or actually seeing what are the trends within window displays in fashion, or, like where culture is made, bring that in, and how is that relevant to what you're doing?
Yeah, it's so exciting. And then when agencies bring you things that you're not expecting, and you may not do it, but it just gives you this kind of, wow, that's incredible. And how can we make or do something like it? Or, it's just a real spark. And I think, I'm kind of thinking to some of the comments made recently about, ChatGPT and AI is going to do 95% of the work of agencies and creative teams. I don't know where it's going to be in 5 years' time, but I don't know if ChatGPT and AI can do the things we've just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting just to play myself an experiment with lots of sort of different AI tools, and I think there is so much to be said. I love technology, but again, I don't think it's ever an either or. And actually, the human being, and like, even what are the prompts that you're asking it, right? You can be creative, and that comes from a human, not from the sort of technology or machine. And sort of equally, it's great that we can continue to evolve. What can technology do for us? But it's our responsibility to make sure that we're not getting into, honestly, just the messy middle of just like average.
Yes.
Because there's not only beauty and joy, but often commercial success when you are trading elements of risk. And that is where, for me, the sort of human creativity and what you bring can really add values. And we need the humans, even from a privacy point of view, or a trust point of view, or the ethics point of view. So for me, it's always and, it's never an either or.
Yeah, I think I put something out recently. I said the most important word in marketing, was, well, it was two, it was and or it depends. Like, because they're kind of, to me, the same. Like, I don't there's no rules, and I think it's finding ways for things to enhance. And your curiosity, would I be right in saying that that's what took you then to Virgin Media? Like totally different, like away from cars into a totally different category. Was it to really learn and like say, right, I've got all these skills, how can I do them somewhere else?
Yeah, and maybe, just a little bit of me is built around wanting to carve different paths or kind of challenge the status quo, and to be actually pretty sort of agile and open-minded to change and just sort of embrace it. And so an opportunity came up at Virgin Media, and I jumped at the chance because, again, I love brands. So having worked for a big brand like Honda to then go to Virgin Media, I was like, Virgin's a great brand.
Beautiful brand.
But you know what? It's like, okay, I've got no idea about this new industry. But what I do know is I'm good at marketing. I've made some great sort of work in campaigns. I've got a skill set of working at Honda, pan-regionally, and understanding the importance of relationships, of rapport, of bringing people together to build that sort of consensus, the collaboration, and elevating to a higher human truth. But you know what? I've got no idea really about how the commercials of a single market work. And actually, automotive is relatively slow compared to a media entertainment subscription business. So my mind often, Connor, is what's the worst that can happen? And have no regrets. So sort of moved across. And if things had gone wrong, hopefully I would have got, another job perhaps back in automotive, something like that. But making that move was, again, just incredible because it's working on a different brand. Again, the curiosity to learn a new industry, understand the language, what the levers are that make that business tick. And I also really love that, almost like being a challenger brand. So Honda was at that challenger brand at the time to your sort of VWs and your sort of big established market leaders. And Virgin Media was to Sky and sort of BT. And so going into Virgin Media, seeing how fast-paced, hugely competitive it was, understanding, the churn and the acquisition and just this really, really fast cycle, whilst trying to sort of have the sort of creativity and the respect for the sort of Virgin parent brand, but to do it in a way that was kind of relevant. Sponsorship properties, that was, again, another great 5 years.
We'll be right back after these.
Today's show is brought to you by the Indie List CMO Collective. This service from the Indie List provides you with access to a curated range of highly experienced and talented senior marketing specialists. Visit theindielist.ie to find out more.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
And just as you say, like the difference in kind of pace and the challenges, I guess, in terms of, well, actually we need subscriptions. Like what's I'm sure there was like daily subscription reports and like that's a whole different marketing thing. But then how do you build the brand? Like all that stuff. And I find it, again, when I was looking through all this, I did find it really interesting because a lot of times, people are like, well, this person doesn't have sector experience and therefore, they don't have drinks, so therefore we can't hire them. And I find that incredibly frustrating, because I think the things you're talking about, like if you have good marketing principles and you're curious and you want to learn, I think, some of those things can be overcome.
Yeah. And I think I think it can be overcome. And I think it's, also having the honesty to be just really straight up, and say, do you know what? Clearly, I don't have this sector experience, but this is my mindset. This is how I like to learn. And, for me, just recognizing, I actually don't have the commercial knowledge that I would like to have in terms of understanding. And going into single market and something as competitive as Virgin Media, for me, that was where it was really learning the skill of media planning, channels, mixed media modeling, the sort of forecasting, because we had to really, really understand the ROI of all of the marketing investment and what was going into acquisition, what was going into kind of preventing churn, what was the role of, say, advertising in that, sponsorship in that, how did that convert? I mean, I just want to throw myself into like learning something new. And being, as I said, just being honest to say, this is something that I don't have. I know I want to do that. And that's how I've really thought about, I suppose, each change of role has been, number one, what's the worst that could happen? And number two, it's like, what can I learn? What can I bring? Importantly, like, what gift do I give? But equally, what can I learn?
And I love that, what you're bringing, and then being that honesty of like, these are the things I don't have. But I think did you kind of feel you showed like a path to, this is how I'm going to get there, like to give them the confidence that this was the right hire? Or was it kind of just, I suppose you had a backlog of work as well that was probably, was very impressive. That helps.
And again, working at Honda and with Wyden and Kennedy, like an incredible sort of catalogue of great campaigns. Yeah. So I think that was almost the gift of what I was able to bring, which is really understanding creative, how to get the best out of creative agencies, be quite sort of single-minded. And so I was bringing that, but at the same time, it was a case of then, okay, I need to really learn how does what I do impact my colleagues who are solely focused in acquisition, solely focused in kind of churn, because we need each other.
Yeah. But again, relationships, right? So then the phone rings. It's Formula One.
That was like, excuse me?
Was it? I'd say it must have been. Was it?
Yeah, it was. And again, a really happy, lucky sort of accident. And I got a phone call from a chap called Sean Bratches, American sort of guy who was brought in with Chase Carey when Liberty Media bought Formula One from Bernie. And they'd landed in the UK, Sean and Chase. And Sean had a super long, successful career at ESPN in New York, and had worked with Wyden and Kennedy, New York office. So when he landed in the UK, he went and visited Wyden and Kennedy in London and said, do you know anyone? I'm looking for someone to come and set up marketing. And even though I hadn't worked with Wyden's for sort of 5 years when I was at Virgin Media, I worked with BBH. But Wyden's gave Sean my name.
Wow.
And number. So, I think that, again, that goes back to the power of relationships.
Yeah.
But the phone rings and it's Sean, and had a great chat. Went and met him for a coffee in the London sort of office, temporary office where they were. And we chatted for a sort of about, half an hour. And then, I got an offer through. And that for me was just like, okay, this is really cool because I can bring together fundamentally something I love, which is cars, engines. Yeah. I love speed. And I've now got 5 years of sort of media entertainment business, understand subscription. And actually for that journey that we went on in 2017 through to when I left in 2022, it was very much the sort of revitalization and the transformation of sort of Formula One as a sport. And so again, everything's, hard work and nothing's been easy, but wow, I mean, what a time to be in that business and have the opportunities that I was allowed to have.
Yeah, like an incredible, and you've talked before about it being like a challenger almost or disruption mentality, because it's a 60-year-old brand, very well known, but had a perception probably of not being for everybody.
Yeah.
And was that kind of the brief?
Yeah. And I love to really simplify things. And so I described it as the 69-year-old startup.
Right.
And the problem, again, I love having a problem, a simple problem to solve, but it was the perception of the sport in sort of 2017 was that of a billionaire's boys club.
Yeah.
And it at that time, it had been in decline.
Yeah.
Viewership, attendance. And I remember kind of typing into Google, Formula One is, and the first three things that came up were dying, not a sport, and boring.
Had you taken the job at this point?
I had. But you know what? How cool is that? That your problem can be so simply defined and clarified, and actually to have that as a provocation to then leap off from very much, then allowed us to set the strategy, the plan, and then, okay, what tactics are we going to do with the limited resources that we all have? And what are we going to run at? But we just went like fast with everything. Get out there, do it, test it.
Right.
Stop it, evolve it. It was just full on, but so exciting. And it was from that problem is then like, okay, we need to make the sport more accessible. What's that mean? We don't want to cheapen it, but we want to open the sport up.
Yeah.
And that's when we just like, okay, this is our plan. This is how we're going to go from here to this sort of endpoint over here, which is we want more people watching it. We want to grow the fans. And we want more people coming to races.
And obviously everyone knows Drive to Survive being a huge kind of thing. And it's, people say that's kind of helped bring. Was that part of the plan? Like, did you write that in the plan going, could we make a documentary, or how did that come about?
Sean actually was like, we're going to do this, as in we should do a documentary. And so we had a couple of sort of proposals. And the brilliant things in sports is, and particularly sports that haven't done it, people do want to do stuff with you, because I think people start to see the opportunity and like the change taking place. So we had lots of ideas of like, we can do this. And the documentary, Sean was like, we're going to do this. And actually, Connor, the budget that I had was really small for a global sport. Really small budget. When I joined, I was head count number 1, and Sean said, right, you've got 12 people, 12 head counts, design your team, go out and build a team and get everything in. And so actually, once we started kind of reviewing the proposals in on the table, for me, Drive to Survive just became honestly the perfect marketing tactical tool.
Yeah.
Because I never would have had a budget or the capabilities or the people to be able to do that. So, an amazing idea. There's a group of us that sat around like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then, went out, didn't at the time know it would be the success that it's sort of become. but it was absolutely brilliant. And I'm the one thing that I'm really sort of proud of having sort of influenced and stood up for was the importance of Box to Box, the production company, or Netflix, having editorial control.
Right. Okay.
Because we would talk about it, say, well, we could do this ourselves when I was at Formula One, and it could have been done in-house. Like, there's incredibly talented people inside the sport. And I would say, you are the best in the business at producing and directing a live race.
Yeah.
We are not the best in the business at telling long-form stories. But you know what Netflix are?
Yeah.
So, I'm so pleased that we back that. And yes, you always have your sort of like moments of tension where you're like, oh my goodness, can't believe that. Or, ugh. But if you come back again to the core components of brilliant stories,
Yeah.
heroes, villains, highs, lows, jeopardy, we would have like flattened all of those things out a little bit had we done that ourselves about us. Whereas if you do that with an external, you're going to maintain more of that. And equally, they need access. So they will build trust. They will be respectful, but they will also have in their mind, what is this story that we're telling?
Yeah, the importance of the story. And actually, probably if you'd done it yourself and come back to that, it would have been maybe a bit inside out. Because you would have what are the important things we need to communicate? Whereas they were looking at what's the story we can tell, the human connections, and it's, a wonderful success story. We need to get on to the beautiful Manchester United and where you are now. And
I appreciated your top earlier, Connor.
Yes, I had to take it up. It's so hot. But interestingly, and I find this again going back to maybe the point earlier about sectoral knowledge. Football was not something you had a real passion for. So how did this all come together?
Yeah. No, you're right. When I again was growing up, motorsport, clearly. And then it was rugby and cricket at home. So I'd never been sort of exposed to sort of football as a kid. The appeal of the role is, come on, it's Manchester United. It's a privilege and sort of an honour to be able to kind of work in these sort of big sort of brands. And then you go Manchester United. It's a cornerstone of sport.
Yeah.
And I think my openness to knowing what I don't know, and again, I think just always thinking through a lens of, say, service. I'm incredibly respectful of the essence and the DNA of where sports have sort of come from. I'm really wanting to, again, sort of understand why is it important to people?
Yeah.
What makes them care? And try to build my understanding that way. And sort of equally, again, blessed that there are lots of people in Manchester United who are football fans. So knowing the shortcomings I have, I can ask a lot of questions to people that have that sort of football sort of knowledge and understanding.
Yeah.
But then equally, by my very nature, I've got a curiosity to want to kind of learn about it and to sort of understand it. And just to ask questions or to kind of watch things or read things. And to do that, so I'm respectful of where I am and I understand it. And equally, we will be a millimeter on the timeline of kind of Manchester United. I mean, the club will be 150 in 2028. And, you know, I'm coming up for 2 short years at the club, you know, so far. So it's understanding sort of that, and equally, what I can bring from my experience is knowledge and understanding of fandom and supporters and what's important to them. And then it's about, I think for me, that blend of respecting the past and the heritage, but the curiosity and the desire to continue to evolve it so that we remain relevant and the club continues to live for another 150 years. And hopefully, Connor, I don't need to know what the football operations department need to know. I need to appreciate it. I need to respect it. But that's not the skill set that I've been brought into the club for.
Yeah. They're not asking you to scout or, you know, talk about the offside.
I think I've been pretty poor at that.
Wait, what was the brief for the role?
The brief for the role was huge fan base. So there's 1.1 billion fans and followers across the world. Phenomenal. Such scale. And the brief for the role and for me was, how can we actually build relationships with our fans and supporters, no matter where they are in the world? And you know, you may recall, I joined in September 2022, and obviously we'd had the fallout of ESL sort of earlier. And so that sort of remit of building relationships with fans and supporters, but to do that on a really holistic sort of level. So to do that thinking about communications, to do that thinking about brand and creative, so the importance of experience, to do that thinking about content, and to do that thinking about sort of fan engagement, and to almost be able to sort of think about all of those different kind of touch points and how is everything kind of connected, and very much bring a sort of fan first mindset. So coming back to that outside in of really understanding what is important to a fan and a supporter. What do they care about? And clearly balance that with
the commercial,
with what's important to the club.
And
how do you try to sort of take that forward so that it's benefiting fans, partners, community, you know, local community, and the club itself.
Because I was thinking that as well, it's a very complex ecosystem, because you have, you know, sponsors and partners, you have, you know, probably, you know, the whole other corporate piece, probably, you know, in terms of hospitality, there's, you know, the fans, the matchday fans, there's the 1.1 billion around the world that care. How do you, you know, how do you come out from all of that and kind of go, you know, I take all this information, because that's a lot of information and a lot of inputs. How do you kind of figure out where to focus?
It's hugely complex, as you kind of point out. And again, you know, simplifying things, I always think, first and foremost, know where you're starting from and what the actual situation is. And to be quite harsh with holding the mirror up.
Okay.
As to where are you starting. And then for me, it's really important that for your, I'm going to say core fan, core supporter, that match-going fan, that fan that is spending a lot of their time with you, it's, well, what's working for them, what isn't working for them? What can we do to better understand and to better serve that fan? And so there's been a lot of sort of focus from the club on that through, for example, being the first club to set up the fan advisory board, building those relationships with the Manchester United Supporters Trust, so MUS, the sort of independent supporters, and the sort of fans forum, and having that kind of regular dialogue is fantastic to genuinely know what is impacting fans and what they care about. Now, it doesn't mean that we can say yes to everything.
Yeah.
But what we can do is, again, talk about something, understand what's a priority, and equally understand each other's perspectives, and then say, okay, how are we going to get there? And those are the things, if I think about what the club has then implemented, safe standing, or actually looking at the Stretford end and sort of moving to put more safe standing there, putting sort of general admission tickets back in there, thinking about how can we bring in, say, younger fans and move them into the Stretford end because of what the Stretford end represents. And we know how important kind of atmosphere is within the sort of stadium. So those are some sort of examples where, you know, and it's not sort of just me, Connor. There's lots of people from around the club that are in these kind of working groups. But to take that and to then know what really matters to fans, and even with thinking about cost of living, so how can we sort of support with affordable, you know, pint and a pie at a match.
Yeah.
Not having sort of increased ticket prices for a sort of 11 seasons. Thinking about the policies around how do you know, get cup tickets versus, you know, reducing ticket touting. So there's all of those things that the club has spent a lot of time really sort of focusing on with that sort of core group. And then what we've also started to do in a parallel track is build that connection and understand where our official supporters clubs are around the world. So there's 300 in 80 countries.
Yeah.
Connor, they may never have the opportunity to come to Old Trafford.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what? Their love and support for the club is no different to someone who is fortunate enough to travel to Old Trafford. And therefore, actually, again, what is our role at ensuring that those supporters clubs, our official members from around the world, still feel really connected into us as a community. And that could be content, it could be behind the scenes, it could be us, you know, working with them for key events, and a legend goes out to sort of local market, pre-season tour. And that's where, again, a lot of sort of work will take place of really understanding that, and then how can we take that into better serving our supporters so that they feel part of our community.
Yeah, it's incredible, you know, like challenge, but also opportunity to get that, you know, I don't think it was wrong, but like just getting it to better next level and kind of that, you know, performance. And I know we're rapidly up on time because you've a meeting to go to right after this. And so I guess speaking to that, I told you my two boys football mad, and you know, they're like, you know, when are you chatting to Ellie? And they had a question for you, so I'm going to ask you that one as our last question. So they're like, because they've never been to a Premiership match, and like, what is match day like? And then I'm going to add to it, what's it like for you? What's your day like?
It is electric. So I'm not going to lie. The more that I appreciate football, the more anxious and invested I am in the day. So I've got an incredible team. And so match day for them starts far earlier than I think anyone would imagine. And that's across communications. It could be, that we've got sort of warm-up events for the visiting official supporters clubs and kind of members that take place. We've got people from a social media point of view, photographers. So, it's a heavy lift and it starts really, really early for them. For me, it's very much about representing the club. It could be hosting the visiting club. It could be kind of hosting guests, and really just making sure that the team have everything they need in order for everyone to be able to kind of do their jobs to the best of their abilities, because we're all here to contribute to finding ways to win on the pitch. And that's the sort of lens about looking at everything through. But I do find it quite hard on the heart at times. Your heart is racing, and the unpredictability and the drama that comes with sport. It's nice to get to the end and to know we've won.
Yeah.
And you can kind of like let your shoulders down and breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, sport it's beautiful, isn't it? And
it's intoxicating, isn't it?
Yeah, and what a beautiful place to be doing it at in Man United. Ellie, listen, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Really appreciate you fitting it in. I know you've a lot on, so I really, really appreciate it. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Connor, it's been really fantastic to spend this time with you. And once again, thank you for the invite. And I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up an inspiring episode with Ellie Norman. I was so looking forward to speaking to Ellie. I'd met her through the Marketing Leadership Masterclass that Thomas Barter and Sil Saller have going, and one of the talks she gave in that, and it's phenomenal. And just a reminder, actually, if you haven't done that Marketing Leadership Masterclass, it is excellent. And the joy is you get to go back and meet people like Ellie even after you finish the masterclass. Anyway, an amazing journey through marketing. Amazing to hear, Ellie's view on the power of sports, the transformational impact of storytelling and connecting with fans and audiences worldwide. From Ellie's beginnings in marketing to the pivotal role in revitalising the brand image of Formula One, and now at the helm of marketing for Manchester United, the great Manchester United. This episode for me covered the essence of genuine engagement, innovation, the human touch in marketing, and the need and power of curiosity. It was wonderful to get into, as Ellie said, the power of sport and how emotionally connected people are to sport and the teams they love. A big thank you to Ellie for sharing such powerful insights, and I will continue to work on the non-Man United fan in this house and get him to join the 1 billion people across the globe that know what team to support. To you for listening or watching, thank you so much for joining us, and that's what I call marketing. Don't forget, please do rate, review, subscribe. It really does help us reach an engaged community of marketers just like you. And don't forget, our next episode will be out next Tuesday, and I can guarantee it is another great episode of That's What I Call Marketing. So from me, your host, Connor Byrne, thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks to the Indie List for sponsoring today's show. Visit theindielist.ie to find out more.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency